Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being with us. Man, I saw this article. It was posted up at familycouncil.org. Police find over 2,200 aborted babies at late abortionists' home. This was a story, didn't get a lot of coverage. Pretty outrageous stuff. It's a repost from lifenews.com, but Family Council is really good at keeping their readers, their contributors in the know about what's going on with pro-life issues. Matter of fact, we have on the line with us right now from the Family Council. We've got Luke McCoy is with us. Hey, Luke, how are you, sir?
Pretty good, Paul. Can you hear me okay?
I can, actually. That's a really good connection.
I'm on my Bluetooth on the side of the road right now in North Little Rock. So
okay. Well,
glad to be on here. Thanks for having me.
You're being safe as well, so that's good.
Yeah.
Well, so Luke, I mean, we talked yesterday about, what we were going to talk about today, and I thought I've been really excited about this segment ever since we discussed it, because we were kind of going over this idea of infanticide in the ancient world. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, as maybe some of your listeners know, but in case those that don't, Family Council is a socially conservative advocacy organization here in Arkansas. We're actually celebrating 30 years.
Wow.
This past June to next June is sort of our 30th anniversary. So we're very glad to be a part of this work. It's a challenge, but it's also a pleasure. But our main issue, Paul, is basically protecting innocent human life from conception to natural death. And so a lot of people think of the pro-life movement just to deal with abortion, which is the termination of a pregnancy in the womb. But really, we go back to conception. That covers IVF, surrogacy, and all sorts of stuff, and all the way to natural death in the grave. So, but to talk about what you're alluding to, my coworker, I got to give him credit, David Cox, Jerry's son, back in the early part of the summer, late spring, actually, was looking into just how old the pro-life movement is. And many people think it started with maybe Ronald Reagan or James Dobson or some other early member of the conservative movement of the 20th century, but that's not the case. I think what you're alluding to as far as the article on our website, familycouncil.org, people can click on, at the top right somewhere, probably click on our library and click on update letters, and they can select the June-July edition of our update letter. And if people are not a part of our mailing list, again, they can get signed up on familycouncil.org as well. But yeah, you're right. The right to life has not been a 20th century phenomenon. It was clear back in biblical times, as early, or excuse me, as late as the day of Pentecost in Acts 2. We don't find this necessarily in the Bible, but we actually find it in the, and I may not be pronouncing it correctly, but the Didache, or Didache. It is a document that many, even secular and biblical scholars, believe is factual and relevant to the time. But if I may just read a little bit of what my coworker David put in our update letter, it says in the second chapter of the Didache, tells Christians to avoid sins like murder, adultery, fornication, stealing, and even magic. But in the middle of that second chapter, it says, you shall not murder a child by abortion, nor kill that child which is born. And even other translations will say, quote, thou shalt not procure abortion, nor commit infanticide. And of course, I think a lot of your listeners are familiar with what happened several months ago with the Virginia governor coming out and others. It's horrible. It is absolutely horrible. And even this abortionist that passed away, keeping all sorts of baby parts in his garage. I mean, the investigation's still pending when I looked at it the other day, but you got to wonder, what was he doing? And we hear all this news about Planned Parenthood selling baby parts. I mean, folks, let's not be naive. These people are in it for money. They're not in it just to supposedly help women or some sort of other reason. They're in it to make money. They're doing all sorts of things with precious, innocent human life. None of us would want to be on the receiving end of that. So Paul, you're right. the pro-life movement and this issue of infanticide, Christians were rescuing babies, literally that were just born, babies, newborn babies from the elements when they were discarded. That's also
now that was all
been proven
legal
in
too,
others.
right? Like in Roman society, it was fine to just if you didn't want the baby, you could just leave it in the wilderness, right?
Correct, yeah. And again, if folks want to go to our June, July update letter on our website, find it. David goes on in this short piece that in the Greco-Roman world, ancient Romans practiced crude forms of abortion, and historians tell us unwanted babies routinely were left to die from exposure on hillsides, on the outskirts of town and villages. And so guess what? Luckily, many Christians would come and either oppose those practices or they would rescue those children. And that's kind of where the idea maybe of where orphanages had started. These kids, these are human beings. They deserve rights just as much as us who are grown or living or loved and appreciated by our families and so on. So it's really sobering to know what went on in those times. It's tragic. It makes me feel so thankful for my parents. My mother chose, and I tell her that routinely, that I just am so thankful she decided not to discard me or whatever. But and what's even kind of neat too about this pro-life movement being a part of a 2,000-year-old tradition is really Christians have been lobbying their leaders for about that length of time too. You can go back in the New Testament time. Of course, we're just talking about Christians, not even Old Testament believers, but you can go probably even far back as the Old Testament. Moses, pleading with Pharaoh and others. And I'm by far no Old Testament scholar, so please don't quiz me on that. But nonetheless, many instances of where people of faith lobbied their leaders. I think one of the earliest forms of a representative republic is in Deuteronomy 1.
Yes.
Where people were encouraged to choose among them wise leaders from the tribes of Israel. So I say all that just as an encouragement. Obviously, we want to educate people and tell them that, look, this has been going on such a long time. Evil prevails. But nonetheless, we've had people that have been faithful to oppose abortion and to protect and promote the sanctity of human life, especially innocent human life. And so it is, like I said earlier, it is a challenge, but it's a pleasure to do this work, and we encourage everyone to not give up, not grow weary, and doing good.
And I really appreciate those thoughts. We're talking with Luke McCoy, again, familycouncil.org. Go to the website right now. Also sign up for their newsletter if you're not already signed up. Luke, you make some really good points, and we can't deny here in the state of Arkansas the success that we have had as a state in rejecting this evil. This evil that is really a genocide of our children.
Yeah. So, Paul, if I were to say Prescott, Corning, DeWitt, Atkins, these are cities in Arkansas. Do you have any idea what the population of those cities are roughly?
I don't. I know it's small, but
that's all right. 3,100 people. 3,100 people roughly in each of those four cities, but each of those four cities represents individually, how many abortions were performed in 2018. That's according to the Department of Health here in Arkansas. So just to be clear, in 2018, there were like almost 3,100 abortions reported in the state of Arkansas. Imagine if Prescott or Corning or DeWitt or Atkins were just gone. Just imagine that's how many abortions occurred in 2018. But again, I want to be an encouragement. The trend has definitely turned the corner 180 degrees. Why? Because in the peak of abortion numbers here in Arkansas was the early 1990s. We are down 56% from that peak of abortion. So the tide is turning. We've got great pro-life efforts here in the state. We've got more and more pro-life legislators and pro-life policy coming out of the state capitol, and so a culture of life is growing here in Arkansas. people are learning, they're getting educated about the issue. We're glad to be a part of that. Our friends at Right to Life and many other groups have definitely been a part of that. When you share things on Facebook and you talk to your neighbors and your coworkers and your family and so on, please, this is a hugely important issue here. People need to know about. I appreciate tax policy and all the other issues that face us as a state, as a nation, but I think this issue has eternal consequences. So
I can't argue with that, because you're exactly right. It's life and death, and so yeah, it does have eternal consequences. And I really appreciate you making this point that this is something that's been going on for a while. As King Solomon said, nothing is new under the sun. And so we've always had this idea where it's a temptation where we as humans, we think of these children as burdens, and we're consumed with selfishness, and we want to do something to get out of that responsibility. Whether it's something as a father abandoning his family, or whether it's a mom that wants an abortion, in the modern day. But like you said, back in the ancient world, there were Christians who were taking care of these abandoned children on the hillside, and it was perfectly legal in Roman society to do these things. I think having that perspective, that long view, that 2,000-year perspective that you were just telling us about, Luke, is encouraging. It's encouraging because we still are called to stand against injustice, stand on the side of justice, and stand up for those who can't take care of themselves. And that's certainly a little baby, or also trying to protect families and keep the traditional family intact as well. So I really appreciate the work you guys are doing, Luke.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And again, thank you for this opportunity and to come on your radio show. We really appreciate that. We would love to be on.
Absolutely. Luke McCoy, it's a pleasure, sir, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.
You too, Paul.
All righty. Folks, again, it's familycouncil.org.